Welcome to the Winning Edge Investments Podcast. Winning Edge Investments provides industry-leading horse racing and sports betting tips, ratings and education, enabling you to invest intelligently and treat your betting like a business. Go to www.winningedgeinvestments.com to learn more about how you can start to supercharge your betting bank immediately. Treat your betting like a business and invest intelligently with Winning Edge Investments.
Welcome everyone to our 2025 Melbourne Cup preview. I'm Dean Evans from Winning Edge Investments, and joining me shortly on this 2025 Melbourne Cup preview is Luke Murrell from Australian Bloodstock, a name familiar to most in racing. He's had some great success, particularly in the Melbourne Cup. He's won it in 2014 with Protectionist and in 2022 with Gold Trip. He's won plenty of other races too with his Australian Bloodstock arm, and they've got three really good chances: Riffa, Vauban, and Royal Supremacy this year. There's the track here, the 3200. They have a big long run down the straight, and then they big, wide, spacious Flemington track over the 2 miles for the Melbourne Cup. Just looking at the last 14 years, this race, what makes it so interesting and fascinating is there's just a litany of different form lines from both Australia and overseas. We've got 10 overseas trained runners this year, which is almost half the field. Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds. They get classed as 4-year-olds in the Southern Hemisphere, run very well. Rekindling won in 2017, Cross Counter won in 2018, El Paradiso probably should have won in 2019. Tiger Moth ran a close second in 2020, and Doval Legend ran fourth in 2022 with a lot of weight. And there is a Northern Hemisphere 3-year-old in this race further with 52 kgs, which is the right sort of weight. That profile as well. Equal or more weight that start in their last start. Melbourne Cup, only 2 winners, very elegant and without a fight. Otherwise, you want to have your weight reducing, and the only horse whose weight is rising is half yours, who got the penalty after his Caulfield Cup win. The Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds, they get classed as 4-year-olds, have a good record, as is 6-year-olds. Even 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds have a solid betting profile. Anything 9-year-old plus, we haven't had a winner in the last 14 years, and 5-year-olds up in a year too soon as well. Not a positive betting proposition, but the positives in terms of the age: Riffa, Presage Nocturne, Middle Earth, Land Legend, Torranzino, and Valiant King. And the negatives: Arapaho, Smokin Romans, Meydaan, Half Yours, Parchment, and Royal Supremacy. Barriers: 20 plus, only 1 winner. Inside barriers are pretty good, and barriers 12 to 19, pretty good record as well. There's a wide range of lead-ups, Bendigo Cup, Moonee Valley Cup, the Cox Plate, Geelong Cup, even Herbert Power and the Bart Cummings all have a good record with runners. Actually, from a betting perspective, the worst race is the Caulfield Cup with only 2 winners from 102 runners, and they were without a fight, and Vow and Declare, and they both came off a Queensland run, which is a positive at least for half yours, but it's not always actually the greatest betting lead up the Caulfield Cup historically. Any sort of gear change is usually a negative. Only 1 winner from 93 runners that's had a gear change. Riffa, Vauban, Chevalier Rose, Land Legend, Changingoftheguard, Goodie Two Shoes all have some form of gear change. 7 to 12 career starts is a positive betting proposition. 5 winners from 48 runners. Further and Parchment Party qualifier there. 4th up's usually a negative, as is 7th up or more in their prep. Valiant King, Meydaan, and Royal Supremacy, the negatives there. Horses that have actually had a 3,200 metre start, 2 or more 3,200 metre starts in the past, actually only have 1 win from 96 runners. Arapaho, Vauban, Absurde, Flatten The Curve, more Felons, Onesmoothoperator, Athabaskan, and Goodie Two Shoes, all negative qualifiers there. And only 1 winner, which was Knight's Choice last year, had an SP rank of 11th or worst in the race. So usually something in the top 10 betting does win the race. Horses coming off 3,000 metre run or more at their last start or a 2,000-meter run, or a 26 to 2,800 with the negatives. Chevalier Rose, Flatten the Curve, and more Felons, the negatives there. Only one mare's won in the last 14 years, and that was very elegant. I think only one's run a place as well, High Emotion. So mares do have a negative record. Goodie Two Shoes and River of Stars, the negatives there. Interestingly, horses with a 1.6 mil prize money or more, only 2 winners from 70 runners. You generally either want to be at the top, the top 6 in terms of the handicap rating, the class horses winning 7 from 82 runners, or the bottom with those really lightweight 17 to 24 5 winners. Only 2 winners in that middle group, 7 to 16. Chris Waller's had 34 runners for 1 winner, 5 seconds to force. Mars had Kieran Maher, 24 runners, 1 winner, 4 have run second to fourth, and Joseph O'Brien, 10 runners for 2 winners. And then when you're doing things like trifectas and first fours in particular, that's where you find that the Chris Waller and Kieran Maher runners, you generally want to throw them in. And Joseph O'Brien obviously has a fantastic record in the race as well. There's some trainer ratings that are negative if rated 1.75 or below on my database, which is a negative for Presage Nocturne, Flatten the Curve, Changingoftheguard, Onesmoothoperator, Parchment Party, and Torranzino. The 200-meter wins, if you've actually won over the 2 miles, only 1 winner from 76 runners has won over 3,200. So negative for Arapaho, Vauban, Absurde, Flatten the Curve, and Goodie Two Shoes. There's only 1 winner from 68 runners if they got a win percentage rate of under 20%. So Buckaroo, Chevalier Rose, Meydaan, Land Legend, Onesmoothoperator, Athabaskan, River of Stars, Torranzino, and Valiant King, all negatives there. You want to be informed, nothing's run 10th or worse at their last start and won, which is a negative for Vauban, Chevalier Rose, and Land Legend. Nothing settled 14th or further back at the last start and won in the last 14 years. Again, negatives for Chevalier Rose, Land Legend, Royal Supremacy, and Valiant King. For your SP under $9 at your last start, that's a positive. Riffa, Vauban, Middle Earth, Smokin Romans, Half Yours, more Felons, Onesmoothoperator, and Royal Supremacy, the positives on that. If your SP above $30 your last start, there hasn't been a winner from 50 runners. Presage Nocturne, Land Legend, and River of Stars, the negatives there. A few positives and a few database ratings, consensus ratings and speed ratings and peak distance ratings, and relative value ratings on the ratings to win database that I use. The positives for those were horses like Half Yours, River of Stars, Royal Supremacy, Goodie Two Shoes, Further, Valiant King, Vauban, Middle Earth, Meydaan. And the official handicap rating, as I mentioned before, your top 7, that's usually a positive. Riffa, Buckaroo, Arapaho, Vauban, Chevalier Rose, Presage Nocturne, and Further. Low jockey trainer rating is a negative. Only 1 winner with a low rating on the database. Flatten the Curve and Parchment Party, the negatives there. 10,000 meters is the Bart Cummings theory, and the winners have had 11,000 since 14th July, 8,200 since 27th of May, 9,940 since 30 July, 7,040, 21 August. That was very elegant. 11,264 meters since 14 June, 12,000 since 25 May, 11,600 since 7th June, 13,000, 38, 18th May, 10,540, 8th June, 9,940, 29 August. So pretty positive play there in terms of, wanting that 10,000 meters that Bart Cummings used to love and that Luke Morrill talks about a lot. And overseas raiders that ran a place in the Melbourne Cup, most of them, ran in sort of late August or mid-September. And you can see 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 5th, 5th, 3rd, 1st, 2nd. So they ran worse than 5th, generally a negative for them. And Chevalier Rose and Further come off overseas runs running worse than 5th. We sort of talked briefly here about Smart Odds, which is an odds comparison service, gives you real-time live updates of prices, fluctuation graphs, fully customizable layouts across horse race and greyhound and harness with nearly 100 bookmakers covered. Odds comparisons, layouts, fluctuation graphs, detailed form guide, historical data, price alert watch list system, and a black book are all features of Smart Odds. And these are just some of the services that we've got with Winning Edge Investments. One's Trial Spy that I run. It's identifying horses from the barrier trials and the jump outs. October, just last month, we won plus 51.9 units profit. So someone betting $100 a unit made $5,192 profit in the month. Year to date, 170 units profit, 17,000 profit per $100 unit. Since September last year, over $21,000 profit. Unload's another service that I do it's mainly focused on the major races. So I do the detailed historical profiling for the major races, and then the horses who meet that historical profile plus meet all the rating requirements needed to win the race. That's how we bet, on those really high confidence races where everything lines up, 1 or 2 bets a race maximum. Member only service, not on the website, restricted membership because we want to protect the dividends. And we've made $7,144 profit per $100 unit just since the start of September, so the last couple of months at 47% profit on turnover. And traders' tips, these are a couple of industry insiders with the bookies. They know when the sharpest punters that are winning big dollars in Australia. They know when they're betting, and they bet just yesterday. They had a $35 winner poker jack at Randwick lead all the way. They had a unit each way on, so about something like a 45 unit collect from members there. They had 2 units on Panova, who won the first at $6.50 for Chris Waller and the Carbine Club. Since just July, $10,869 profit per $100 unit. And since New Year's Eve, so the last sort of 10 months or so, over $20,000 profit per $100 unit. So big profits with all these 3 services, and they price at sort of $287 to $387 a month. And you can see the profits are obviously, dwarfing those small subscription fees. I just wanted to show you quickly the Melbourne Cup market here on the Smart Odds website. As you can see, there's heaps of functionality. You can look up stats of horses. You can look up jockey stats over the last 12 months and all time. You can look at trainer stats as well at Flemington and all time. After a race is run, you can see the results. You can write notes about races that you can save. This form here for every runner. Just check out the record of the track, the distance, the going, all of that sort of thing. And change all your layouts here. And multiple different layouts per your preferences. Set the grids however you like around the odds and which bookies and the market movers and how you want the odds to display, all of that sort of functionality. Add the jockey silks, jockey name. I like that everything's here. You've got all the bookies out here, but you've got the horse, the weight, the barrier draw, the trainer, the silks. You can add black book. There's a really great price watch list feature. So if a market isn't up yet, you can click on over the horse name or even just a race and say, oh, there's no market yet. You want to be alerted when there's a price, when the markets first come up. If there's a horse you want to back and you want to be the first to back it when the odds come up with the early bookies, you can set it, send you an email to tell you that the race is coming up. There's a black book feature as well, so you can black book horses and again, will email you when they're running. Lots of amazing functionality. You can show the fluctuations of all the horses. You see here I've got this set up, the three totes. There's a couple of different rating systems, both by Smart Odds and by bettingsites.com on the bookies and ranking them. The Smart Odds ranking is quite intelligent. It's basically based on the market percentage, so which bookies have the lowest market percentage. So you can actually see when you're trying to work out which bookies should I get an account with, who are actually the ones with the best odds, and it'll tell you that based on the previous data. And look, the value of using an odds comparison tool like this is quite clear. When you have a look here, Riffa, if you're a $100 punter and you're betting here, you're taking $8.50, where you can get $10 here. That's an extra $150 in your pocket straight away with that one bet. Even if you're a $50 punter, that's an extra $75. And this costs $30 a month. For me, it's a no-brainer. Like, people compare, obviously when you're getting a mortgage, when you're getting insurance, when you're getting petrol, all sorts of things, and it's insane to me that you would bet without this. Why would you? Why would you want to be taking $8.50 about a horse that's $10? And you can see across the board the disparity in prices on different runners. Chevalier Rose as an example. Now, with a lot of these bookers here, you're getting $31. You can see here sports bet of $46. That's $15 difference. $100 bet, there's a $1,500 difference if it wins. And so there's huge discrepancies. It tells you where the best price is. So you can set up an account. At the moment, it looks like, sports bet, Punt Now and Boom Bet have in particular some pretty good prices. But that's the functionality of smart odds. That's the advantage in this current market. It looks like we've got 5 horses at single figure odds at the moment. Riffa $9, $10 best. Buckaroo $9.50 best. Presage Nocturne $8.60 best. We go down to half your $7.40 best, and Valiant King $8.10 best. So 5 runners at that single figure odds. In what's a really interesting Melbourne Cup market. But now we'll start with our chat with Luke Murrell and go on the horse by horse preview. Alrighty, well, I'm joined here by Luke Murrell, founder of Australian Bloodstock. Always great to chat with you, Luke. And this must be, a really exciting time of the year for you. I know you've won 2 Melbourne Cups with Gold Trip and Protectionist, but I guess this is with your business. This race is certainly one of the big ones that you target, and it must be pleasing for you to get to this point of the year and have 3, legitimate chances in the race.
Yeah, very pleased from a business point of view, Dean. A little bit disappointed for the owners that would Sadati, and look, to be fair, he probably wasn't a winning chance, but it's such an iconic race, as you know, and it would have been great to get the 4th one into. It's more, I remember when we had our first runner, Illustrious Blue, and he ran 11th or something, and just the whole week, the moment of the race, it was an extra experience that you can't describe, and you'd want everyone to experience it. So, look, it's fantastic that we got 3, and now I suppose having been there, sort of really keen to try and win it. But it's a deep race, a different race this year than we normally get, and obviously we've got the curveball of the weather potentially changing it as well. So, be an interesting addition this year.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts on the weather? It's sort of, the forecast is obviously pretty rough for today's Sunday, but Monday is meant to rain a lot, and then Tuesday might be a bit of rain. I find that Flemington track, it's the best in the world, or certainly the best in Australia, and it just dries really well. Even if it rains the day before, if it gets a day of drying, it could be okay. I think rain on the day is when it can turn into a quagmire. But what's your sense of how? What it's going to be?
The biggest rort in the world, I suppose, is the stat that the Bureau of Meteorology costs $1 million a day to run that, which and as we all know, they're far from accurate. So look, obviously I think I've read some places where there's 20 to 30 Monday and 20 to 40 Tuesday. And you watch, we'll probably wake up Tuesday and it'll be sunshine. But I agree with you. Like, it's just such an amazing draining track. And I don't think it's, you get some tracks like even Geelong the other day, it was a very sticky, luggy type track where this one drains so well. And, if we do get that type of rain, there's no doubt you're going to want some wet track ability for sure. But it's a different type of wet. I think you could handle a wet track here and get distanced at other tracks on the same type of conditions. So trying to line that up, that's obviously a little bit tricky. Where I think a lot of the European tracks, they're exceptionally draining tracks as well. Different base, but so I'm sort of going off wet track form overseas, saying they'll handle whatever Flemington dishes up. It won't be a sticky, gluggy type track, I don't think.
Yeah. I've got 15 to 35 mils tomorrow and then 1 to 10 mils on Tuesday at the moment on my bomb app right now. But like you say, I think it's all guesswork, really. It's all guesswork. And I guess we just need to make sure that the horse can handle some wet stuff.
Sort of You know, I remember Lucas Kranich in the wet. He should have won his Melbourne Cup that year. A couple of the wet Melbourne Cups, the riders do want to get off the track, get off the fence as a rule. So I think if we do end up with that, you might want to have one or two little negatives on those horses drawn 1 to 4 or drawn hard the fence. You know, that might be a disadvantage come race day, race time. But don't know about you, but I've got a lot of speed in the race. What do you say about it?
Yeah, just one thing quickly. I had a look at the last 10 years Melbourne Cups, and on my database, the true track rating was good for 9 of the 10, so good 3 or good 4. The
Yep.
only slow, soft 7 track was the year that you won it with Gold Trip. And
Yep.
he won from barrier 13. But I did notice that the 2nd to 5th horses actually drew single-digit barriers. So
Yeah, interesting.
I was just looking at that from the Vauban perspective, and
Mm.
so it seemed like it was okay. But again, we haven't had a real super Van der Hum type wet track probably since Lucas Cranach might have been the wettest for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we've got up here at the moment is a graphic that you've done here for us with a speed map. And your true odds and some recent ratings, and also the meters and the legs of the horses. So maybe you can talk us through it here. But I'm aligned with you here in terms of Smokin Romans, River of Stars, Arapaho, Goodie Two Shoes, Land Legend look like they'll be the ones pushing forward.
Yeah. I suppose 19 of the last 23 Melbourne Cups have been won by horses with 10,000 metres in their legs or further in a single preparation. So what we find is a lot of the European horses, as a rule, come here with a distinct advantage because they clearly meet that criteria. And it was one Bart Cummings first sort of penned, and it's just throughout history, it just remains so true. The only exceptions have been when we've had a really slow run race. And then that's, iron toughness that you need to do, because Melbourne Cup is a different pain barrier for the horses. It doesn't come into play as much if it's a really slow run race. But the other big factor that I think is worth mentioning, we haven't had a Melbourne Cup in the last 10 years with as many horses with as many miles in their legs. So typically when you get that, you get a faster run race. So you've got horses that are very much rock hard fit. And this year, obviously, we've got a little bit bigger spread in the weights with quite a few horses sitting there at 51 and 52. And generally, most people's psychology when they've got no weight is they want to use it and go forward. And that can create some speed as well. So I think it'll be, and I'm hoping for my sake, it'll be quite a brutal run Melbourne Cup. And generally, the best horses step up in that scenario, and you don't get as many rough results. Unless it's suicidal run, but I don't see it happening that way.
The other exception to the 10,000 rule I thought I'd noticed was maybe if they'd run the Cox Plate and had that class. I think Very Elegant, didn't have the 10,000. She had about 7,000, but she didn't. I think maybe even Green Moon didn't, but again, came off a Cox Plate run.
Yep, you did.
You got Buckaroo there. Interesting, just having a look at your graphic there, that the ones with the low meters, Valiant King, Buckaroo, River of Stars, Legend, more Felons, but the 5 Chris Waller runners, and none of them have the 10,000 meters.
No, and look, part of that reason is we don't have the amount of staying races in Australia as what we do overseas. But I think, look, for mine, Chris Waller's the best trainer in Australia by some way. But I think what Kieran Maher's done very, very well is he's had his horses going earlier in the season, a little bit over the winter period. And, of course, we've seen over the previous few years a lot of horses that have a Queensland preparation do exceptionally well. And that can only be tied back to they've got the miles in their legs, as opposed to, they're not necessarily the classiest horse, but they're very, very fit. And that's what you need in a proper race like this, that it's just sort of sustained strength, I suppose. And that's a really big concern for mine with the Waller horses. Chris he won it with Very Elegant, who she was a bit of a freak. But you see Chris's often every year that they flash, and he might have one run second, third, fourth, but they just don't seem to have that stoutness and that miles in the legs that I'm sure is maybe a distinct advantage,
Yeah, I did notice that when it comes to trainers, the ones that do stand out, obviously Joseph O'Brien is won two, and then Kieran Martin's won one, and I'm just talking about the last 14 years, and he's had probably 4 or 5 seconds to fourths.
Yep.
So there's a lot of those horses, and Wallow, like you say, is the same. He's had very elegant win, but then he sort of has those 4 or 5, but they all sort of run second, third, fourth, fifth, and sometimes flash home. But like you say, they're often not winning.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's a bit like Gay as well, to be honest. Like she's, at her peak, there was none better than Gay. But again, sort of, I think those horses that have the autumn prep, they go out at the end of April, early May, have their traditional 6 weeks off. By the time they get back in, there's just physically not enough time to get the races into them or the miles into them. And
yeah.
because it's not a race distance that a lot of these horses run at, especially the Australian horses, very regularly, it's a hard ask for them, and that's why I'm very surprised Buckaroo's running. I think it's clearly an owner decision overriding the trainer, because
Yeah.
I heard an interview after last year's Melbourne Cup where Chris Waller commented he's never seen a horse so tired after a race. It took him a long, long time to recover, and he sort of made the comment then he wouldn't like to see him back over that distance. So it is a bit of a surprise that he's here.
And everyone tries to say that Buckaroo had a really hard run last year, and I sort of watched it, and he was 3 wide with cover, and then he did take off early, which is hard to do, sort of Murrell around the bend. But I compared that to Vauban, who was sort of stuck out 3 and 4 wide, no cover most of the way, and then took off as well.
Yep.
And Buckaroo only beat him by about a length.
Yep.
Maybe a length and a half. And it's like, well, if you thought Buckaroo had a bad run, go watch the replay of Vauban. I got a query on Buckaroo. I don't think he's going to run. I don't think he runs 2 miles. I think
I just think he's just a wholehearted little trying horse.
Yeah.
And
well, he was more a miler, wasn't he, when he came here? I mean, he stretched him out to 2,000, and I thought even that Caulfield Cup 2400 was really just because most of the horses just didn't handle that awful track that day when it was such a bog, that Caulfield Cup last year. Gluggy bog, and most of them just ran down the track. And then you saw the form reversals where Knight's Choice was 13th and Warp Sweet was 14th. Then they got in a good track and it all turned around.
Yes.
Like you might say that the wet's going to help Buckaroo, and it will, but it's also going to make it makes it the 3200 even harder.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Anyway, I think let's go through the runner by runner. And so we'll start with obviously a horse you know a lot about here. Number 1, Al Riffa, 6-year-old enter. He's got the 59 kgs. I guess what was the reaction? We were down there at the barrier draw yesterday, which was exciting for me. What was your reaction there with barrier 19?
To be brutally honest, I think it's outstanding for him. I wouldn't have liked to have seen him drawn in 1 to 6 or 7.
Okay.
These European horses, they need time to build into their race. They're not used to running, obviously, in as big a field as this, but also as tight as what we do. He was always going to be a midfield. Even if he'd drawn soft, he was only going to be midfield at very best. And I think this is a race where you want to be in. We spoke off air before. You said about your stats. You might want to tell people about those.
In terms of the finishing positions or the settling positions. So in the last 10 years that I looked at, we've had 2 leaders win, Twilight Payment and Bow and Declare. And then apart from that, the next closest settling is 11th. And most of them sort of settle, in that back third, I would say, from sort of 16th to last. Most of the winners have come from. So there's a real hole between settling basically 2nd to 10th, where we haven't had a Melbourne Cup winner in at least the last 12 years that I looked at. I haven't gone further back. So, I think unless you're leading, you really want to be in that back half. And I would say actually you probably want to be in that back third. And when I've watched a lot of the replays, they all bunch up around the turn, and you get that sort of first wave, as you describe it, the first wave, some of these horses go wide and then they're cooked, halfway down the straight. And it's that second wave that's just sat behind that, first run and just sat there with, following a bum and just waiting and waiting, that goes bang. And that's usually where the winner comes from.
Yeah. So for mine, he was always going to be back worse than midfield. Zara can take his time there. And I think it's important. The best way I can describe it, think of a big, those big military planes that, go and fly tanks and all that around the world. They still get up in the air even though they've got a lot of weight. It's all about momentum. And by being a little bit wider back and letting the race unfold, if I'm correct and there's a lot of pressure, he should be able to creep into the race following bums, and he will get a very, very good run, assuming he doesn't find a dead end, where horses are box him in or, come back in his lap. But I
do you think he's going to take his medicine and go right back, or do you think he's okay to sit 3 wide with cover and be, I don't know, in that second, third, or...
No, I'd love to see him third or fourth last pair, let the first 1,000 unfold, and then see what's happening. I think you could lose the race if you want to go forward or try and be midfield and ride cute, and all of a sudden, as you can see, there's a number of horses that want to settle midfield there, and if you're 7 and 8 wide, the last thing you want to be doing is mucking around with a horse's wind and breathing and yanking on the reins to drag him back. I think it'd be better to cop your medicine, the gate's open, left-hand blinker straight away, get in behind them, and then try and pinch a few positions while the others are still jockeying around. The gate's outstanding. I'm sure, I haven't looked at the market, but I'm sure the market would see him drifting because of it. But cross-counter come from this gate, and very similar style. He's going to be back. That's his pattern, and wet will be no problem at all, which I really like. You can see he's already got 12,000 metres in his legs, which is fantastic. And I can tell you, Joseph made the comment that it's a long way to travel. When we bought him, we knew he was a really good travelling horse. He's been to a few countries already, so he's already got that experience under his belt. But he didn't lose 1 kilo of weight, and oftentimes horses can lose 12, 15 kilos. So he's handled it very, very easily. And the other thing in relation to the weight, there's been a lot of horses come previously. Well, 2 things. The weights have been raised this year a kilo. So, I know there's still 8 kilos from top to bottom, but there's been a lot of stout, not classy horses, but proper stayers come to Australia for the Melbourne Cup and get hit by the ambulance. This horse is not a whacker. He's a proper turn-of-foot horse. And to give you an idea, 2 runs ago, he carried 62 kilos to win his Group 2. There was a 1,000-metre race on the same card, and which was also a Group 2 race. They ran 3 lengths quicker than Riffa did, and that was over 1,000, and Riffa ran 2,600. That winner of that Group 2 then went on to win a Group 1 on the next race. So to get anywhere near a classy 1,000, 1,200 metre horse sectionally home and still rate exceptionally well overall, he's a proper weight for age horse. And yes, he's going to have to carry it, but these last 2 he's carried 63 and 62 or something. Like, weight won't be an issue. And when you see him in the yard, he's an absolute Adonis. He's a massive horse, and I don't think it's as relevant this year. The only thing that scared me pre-barrier draw, that was going to be no speed and it would be a stop-start affair. If they can roll and Zara can build into it, he'll find, and he's just got more class than the rest of this field, Dean. So I really think he's your winner.
How does he rate to you compared to your other winners? So you've had Gold Trip win with 57 and a half, 1.5 kilos left. So you've had Protectionist win with 56 and a half, 2.5 kilos left. Now, like you say, they have raised the weights by a kilo, so you could argue that it's a bit closer. But I don't know, there's still some good horses in form that are down there with 51 kg. So you're still given some reasonable horses, I guess 8 kg. So how do you does he rate way above that to carry that extra bit of weight to your previous 2 winners?
He does. Look, Gold Trip was a wonderful horse. He's probably a 3 length better horse than Gold Trip. Protectionist was just a superstar, and he's on par with Protectionist. And Protectionist here, he did win by 5 or 6 lengths running away
Yeah.
from them. So he's every bit as good as Protectionist. And to be brutally honest, that's probably the most confident I've ever been in a race ever with Protectionist.
Yeah.
And I'm not too far off here with this horse.
Just looking at the market, most of them sort of had them $59, but there's a couple that are Unibets actually got them there at $11, and that's been there all morning. They're taking a
Yeah.
real set against them. We've got a couple at $10. You've marked them $3.80, so uh, well, that's clearly you're clearly very confident and clearly think he's the one to beat.
Well, I think it's also coupled with I'm a little bit in a disagreement. I think there's a lot of average horses in the race. Like when I say average, solid, genuine, solid enough horses.
Yeah.
There's not many actually classy horses in the race. I think you can count 3 or 4, maybe 5. The rest
Yeah.
are just genuine handicap type horses. And if we compare, say, Al Riffa to what's a very easy comparison to the other European horses. Look, the closest one is probably going to be Further, and he's if he was in the race over there, if this race was over there, Further would be write your own ticket versus an Al Riffa type horse. So
Yeah.
the other Europeans are all 5, 6, 7, 10 lengths off what Al Riffa consistently produces. And that's the other thing. He is a very consistent horse. He doesn't really put in many stinkers, where some of these other horses can be a little bit in and out. And I think that's very important too. You want to be able to trust that he's going to show up no matter where he does. And he's been to France, Germany, one of those European countries. He's been to Dubai, Saudi Arabia. This is a well-travelled horse with not many miles on the clocks, and basically outside of his 2 maiden runs, everything else has been at Group 1 and Group 2 level, and he's carried this type of weight bar once where he carried 53 and a bit. Everything else he's carried 59, 60, 62, 59. So the weights, it's not as if he's going to get out there and go to let go and think, shit, I've got an anchor on the back. There's none of that.
Yep. All right, very confident push for Al Riffa. So we'll move now on to Buckaroo, 57 kgs, drew barrier 12. There's a lot of people that I've seen a lot of people compare him to Very Elegant, simply because they both sort of ran a placing, I guess, in the Cox Plate ahead of this race, but he's not Very Elegant. Like Very Elegant won an Oaks, an AJC Oaks by a couple of lengths. She won a Tancred by about 4.5 lengths. She won a Caulfield Cup with a big weight for a mare, 55 kgs, and that was a strong Melbourne Cup, Caulfield Cup that year. And people are comparing Buckaroo, who, I mean, would you have considered him a mile? I think he was a miler, when he came here, and he stretched out obviously to be a good 2,000-meter horse. He did run in a Tancred and got beat 1.8 lengths by Calipour, Moore, Felons, Ashram. Then, like I said, he did run that second Caulfield Cup, but I think he was just the horse that handled the track. I just don't see him as a 2-miler. What are your thoughts?
No, he's not. That like you've hit the nail on the head. He's a ripping horse, but gets probably the best jockey in the race to help him. But just the comments from Waller last year suggesting that he wouldn't like to see him running this race again.
Yeah,
it's an afterthought. 7,200 meters in his legs doesn't work in a fast run race. And look, with the greatest respect, the Cox Plate this year was severely down on quality. You got the second favourite that didn't take part, Viva Sistina. She's a superstar in her own right, but she's nowhere near what she was.
Yeah.
And something had to run second, and he ran Game and Brave and all that. But look, no miles in his legs. The only way
it was a slowly run Cox Plate too. In fact, I'm looking at his last 3 runs. The Underwood, they ran -8.5. compared to par time. The Caulfield Stakes where they walked, that was -4.6, and then the Cox Plate was -2.4. So he's come out of three slowly run races as well as having no miles in his legs.
No, and the poor fella's, if we're right in this proper speed, he's going to have his ringer hanging out just keeping up, given what he's been used to. So I
You
just
must find it
don't.
hard to believe that he's actually shorter than Riffa in the market. Slightly.
Look, I get it. Look, he's a big name horse, I suppose.
Yeah.
The guy that just has a bet on a Saturday, they know Buckaroo, they don't know Riffa.
Yeah.
And I get it in that regard, but yeah, look, I think he's just an absolute naught on the roulette wheel, and for mine, he's not really in the race.
Yeah. All right, we're in agreement there. Next horse is Arapaho, who I must say last prep in the autumn, I was really impressed with him. I thought his run in the Tancred was really good because he sort of raced three wide, no cover. He was really wide on the turn. He only got beat a couple of lengths, and what I thought was a strong race with Dubai on a Duke de Sessa and Vauban, who was very unlucky there. And then I was really confident on him in the Sydney Cup, and he won at about 20 to 1. I couldn't believe the price, but just bolted in by 3 lengths, and he's 9, which makes it pretty hard. But I thought if he was, I even thought at the start of the prep, he ran third in the Group One, Winks behind Via Sistina. Then he ran 6th in the Chelmsford. He was solid. Ran 4th in that Kingston Town, but he was on that really hot speed, so that was quite good. And then something went wrong. I think his bloods were wrong in the Met Trot, and he just ran way below par. And then I thought his Bendigo Cup run was pretty poor. So on the back of that Bendigo Cup run, I think the horse just isn't right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he's got 4 flat tyres, unfortunately.
Yeah.
He's a wet tracker, so that'll probably buoy the connections, I suppose. But for mine, he's a wet sort of horse more so than anything. Even his first up run behind Via this prep where he ran third and Aliana second, they went 6 lengths below or something early, and he was there on speed. So what was sort of close enough to the speed. So something had to run third. I think it was just one of them. And the rest of them, I don't know, he's not the same horse that he was. He had that golden prep. And you often see those horses that come a little bit left field. They have this golden prep. They rate through the roof, and then they always revert back. And he's just purely one of them. I dare say, good on him. As I said, it's such an honour to have a runner in the race. I'd say if it wasn't the Melbourne Cup, they wouldn't be running. And he's none for mine.
Yep, agree. All right. Well, the next is our horse Vauban, number 4. It was interesting yesterday. We had the day at Derby Day in the Atrium Ted area, and we were table 222 on level 2. And I yelled out to the people I was with at the draw before. I said, "We're going to draw barrier 2," and out it came. He's number 4, which is 2 + 2 or 2 × 2. The race is on a Tuesday. My wife said the other. So I don't know. I'm feeling like the vibes are that we're just gonna win this Melbourne Cup. But I think one thing that's interesting. You and I are in agreement that this horse's best runs have been when he's actually settled way out the back. He won a Lonsdale Cup when he was 4th last, and with cover, he ran second that RS St. Ledger behind Kyprios and beating Giaboletto. I think was still his best run when he was sort of last with cover. Won the Sky High when he was last and had cover. He ran third in the Tancred that when he sat 4th last, and he probably should have won if Tim Clark had stayed on the fence. And then that Metropolitan run again, he was 4th last with cover, and he was held up most of the straight. And his best runs here have actually been, I think, by happenstance when he sort of got shuffled back further back than originally intended. And I know he's put in a few bad runs, a couple of Melbourne Cups, but both times he's sort of settled close and then taken off at sort of the 700 and exposed really early. His Queen Elizabeth, he was sort of settled too close and got flushed out wide. His Kingston Town, he ran second in that. He sat second on that hot speed and ran 6th. And the Caulfield Cup again, he sort of pushed forward there 7th. He was 3 wide. He got flushed out, exposed early. So I know that I think you and I are, we feel like this horse just needs to be ridden really quiet and have a bum to follow into the straight and really then let loose with one big run, and that's when he races best. But he's drawn barrier 2. I like it because I want him nice there on the fence. But how do you feel about it? We know Gay's horse is obviously traditionally race up on speed, and even Blake Shin, his strength is probably, you see the rise like Antino and that sort of thing is actually taking off early and taking a race by the scruff of the neck. Even the viewed ride when he won the Melbourne Cup, he actually took off quite earlier than usually wins a race. So it's going to be interesting. But what are your thoughts about Vauban?
He's one of the few horses in the race that we mentioned before that have sort of, a weight for age ability horse or classy horse, and he's one of only quite a few that are there. Tongue tie goes back on, crossover goes back on.
Well, initially, have they said anything about that? I was a bit surprised that he hasn't had that on at all for Gage. He took it off before his first run in Australia, and so interesting that both the crossover noseband and the tongue tie go on. Has there been any discussion about that?
To be honest, I haven't heard anything about it. For mine, two things with this horse. He will absolutely, if we get a genuine wet track, he'll absolutely explode on it. Galleyways just love it. Like they are swimmers, proper swimmers. And unfortunately...
He handled it really well on that Tancred too. That's probably the wettest track he's had in here.
And arguably should have won the race.
Yeah.
And, obviously had 59 then. So he's had some terrible luck in his runs in Australia under Gay. As you said, he just gets shuffled back in the wrong position. One thing I do think about this horse, which I don't like Barrier 2 about, I don't think he's in love with racing tight. We touched on it before. A lot of the European horses don't like to be, in a sandwich, locked away. It's definitely what the horse needs in terms of he needs a bum to follow, but I just don't want him to be too crowded. This horse's best hope is, as I said, this genuine rolling tempo. The ones around him just sort of suck back in his face and he's forced to wait. I think if he goes early, he'll run and peak on his run.
Yeah,
I think if he could find a bum or find something, maybe the back of the half yours and track into the race and then pop him out at about the clock tower, he'll just out-sprint. He will out-sprint them, and he's one of the few dangers to the top weight. But like I said, if they come round the turn, like the charge of the Light Brigade, and go, Yahoo, let's get him into the straight and let's open him up, it's too big an ask. And this horse is just a quirky horse. He's been the Melbourne Cup favourite the last couple of years, and he's lost both of his races in the mounting yard. Now, give credit to Gay and Adrian. They've done an amazing job. He parades a lot better than he used to.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did see him in the Caulfield Cup go off in the gates a bit. So he was stirred up there, and technically Blake gave him a decent enough ride in the Caulfield Cup. He got him out, got him midfield, chasing the hot tempo, and he was in an okay spot. But we know this horse, he doesn't like to spend his carrots early and then be asked to spend them late as well. So
yeah, he sort of just turns it up if he doesn't get the first half right, he just sort of turns it up, to be honest. Yeah. I think that's what is turning people off the horse, is a bit hot and cold. But when he's ridden right, he's shown with his runs in the Tancred and in the Metropolitan, even that first up run in the Chelmsford, like he's going well when he's ridden correctly.
100%. So, and that's my only worry. We know the trainer likes to have her horses forward. We've put our thoughts forward more so around the, historical best runs, which, as you touched on, have been ridden cold, upper bum, pop out late, and he can run sprinter-like sectionals, this horse. So you definitely don't want to not include him in your exotics and even in small win bets, but slight worry that he doesn't have the 10,000. That's probably my pot, but I do think he will grow a leg on the wet. He's only a small to medium horse. He's got that action of a wetty, and he's a very good horse on his day, and I think you've got to include him. I've just got him on my second line of potential horses if there's a problem with the top weight.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 4 horses really I'm interested in backing in this race, and he's definitely one of them. $26 is just still a good price. And a quick congratulations. We had a Derby Day tipping comp yesterday, and one of our members, Brad Clark, won that. And so he's now got a 1% 1% of Vauban's prize money in the Melbourne Cup, and this year everybody gets a prize, $100,000 even for running last. So he's definitely going to get something. But we think I still think
Fantastic.
Vauban's going
Yeah.
to get a big check tomorrow. Hopefully the biggest one.
Hopefully.
All right, number 5, Chevalier Rose, 8-year-old. Always loved the Japanese, but this entire has not won for since November last year, and has only had 4 runs since then, and sort of run down the track. Been beaten 10 or 11 lengths his last 3 starts. So, what can you tell us about Chevalier Rose?
Like some Japanese horses, I'm not in love with him on a wet track.
Yeah.
His form this prep has been deplorable. He's sort of, even sectionally, when I do a lot in Japan, and he just hasn't even been running the sectionals. Like, it's one thing to settle out the back and run home, but he's been really a little bit lackluster. Now, part of me thinks his last 2 runs were just barrier trials in preparation for this.
Yeah, over 2,200 and 2,000, so it wasn't his real distance range.
No, but the one thing with the Japanese horses, they're not like they were 5 and 10 years ago. The 2 milers over there are proper average horses. Their best horses are all at 2,000 metres. So, look, he comes out of 2 really good races, or his last 3 have been decent enough races, but he's only really got 1 rating there, which was the 2,400 metre run that interests me. Outside of that,
that was the Group 2 win at Kyoto on the 6th of October, is that the?
Yeah, that's right.
He won that, and then he won a 3,600 after that.
Yeah, that was a really proper rating, and you could in sort of include him here, but I touched on the one that they bought for the Caulfield Cup, and I couldn't believe they bought it, and it ran like a flat tyres, and this one's a little bit the same. It's very much on trust.
If his last runs were that 2,400 Group 2 win and the 3,600 Group 2 win, and they were he was coming into it with that, like, where would you? How would you rate him?
The 2,400 metre run would be you'd say, well, he'll run top 4. But
how does he compare to warp speed at his best?
Like 6 lengths, 8 lengths difference. Warp speed better horse than him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because
he ran 7th in the 10-0 show, beaten 10 lengths. That's a very strong race over there. That Byzantine Dream ran 2nd in it, and I know you rate that horse very highly.
Yeah.
Is that okay running 7th in a 10-0 show, or?
Yeah, but he was still beaten 10. And he sort of sat out the back. Like, there's always good speed in that race, and he sat out the back and he come home, but there was 4 from memory. There was 4 of them in the race that sat a lot closer to him and ran home quicker. And it was just like, he's just had enough.
Yeah.
So you got to respect him. It's a very expensive trip to bring him out here. It'd be the best part of 220,000 return trip. And they have found Damien Lane, which Damien Lane's the Japanese go-to man out here in Australia. But look, you could tick a box, but you're really only living on that 1 run, and we're getting on 12 months ago, which is a little bit hard to have.
And the wet as well, probably.
Yes,
makes it hard.
Yep.
All right, next one. Interested in your thoughts on this horse, Presage Nocturne. He has the form that Australians kind of know. That those sort of 3,000 meter races in France, running sort of placings and races. Got beat, I think, a long net run 3rd last time in the Prix Courgelet, which is sort of that race American, and I think Protectionist came out of. It seems to have a lot of wet track form over the staying trip. That seems to be good, and ran well in the Caulfield Cup. Did they run the Caulfield Cup surprise you a bit? Was it sort of better than you expected, or?
No, look, I really have got serious doubts about the Caulfield Cup this year.
Yeah.
If you stop the race halfway around, the 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 5th horse were all within a length of each other. They were all sucking out of the speed, sort of worse than midfield, saving ground type runs.
Yeah.
And they've all finished with each other on the finishing posts.
Yeah.
Look, I know there's a few people said, oh, geez, it was a good run and whatnot, but sort of he come with 5 or 6 other horses that were in the same spot. I don't think it was anything special. For
Yeah.
mine, there was better runs in the race than him.
Yep.
And you could argue, okay, maybe he wasn't ready and it was just a pipe opener. I get that. But look, he's very fit. He's got 17,000 metres in his legs. Wet tracks will be no problem. What will probably expose him a little bit is if I'm right and there's a proper tempo in this race. He's a French horse, and the French horses generally, they open the gates, they have a cup of tea, they have a sandwich, and then they start running. And it's so bloody boring for the first half of the race. And then they start to crank it up, and at about the 400, they all start, okay, we're having a race. So you find a lot of the French horses really have their ringer hanging out if it's a proper staying event from the outset. I don't. He was solid enough. I don't see him as a winning chance. If we compare the overseas ratings with, say, Riffa's got 7 lengths on him. That's officially, and I think that's probably kind of Presage Nocturne. I think there might be 9 or 10. So for mine, that's a lot he's got to turn around. He only gets 3.5 kilos off Riffa. Look, the fact that he's run well off the plane, and you're saying, well, maybe he improves a length or 2, but I don't think that's enough to get in the finish.
All right. Well, that's a good knock on a horse who is $8.50 at the moment.
Is he really?
Yeah. Who do you think is going to be favourite? Because Riffa's $11 on Uni. Actually, they've just taken out $10 on Unibet at the moment. Buckaroo's best is $9.50. Presage is $8.50 best price. Half Yours is $7.50 best price, but drifting, and then Valiant King's $8. So we basically got 5 horses in single digits, more or less. Who do you think they're actually going to end up backing?
I think they'll just find Half Yours, just simply because it's a winner and it's drawn so well, and the bloke in the pub, he sort of has heard the name before. Where and that's why those sort of more popular horses like your Buckaroos. They seem to be sort of, skinny in the market for a reason, because they're getting a bit of that mug money at the moment. And I think Half Yours starts favourite.
Yeah, I wonder whether they really come for Riffa on the day. They might. The big players might just come in for him, and maybe Valiant King down the bottom as well. But I wonder whether where Riffa just the big money comes on the day, or maybe they call the card even tomorrow.
Yeah, I really think they will find him. He just stands out like dog balls, and I think they find him.
All right, so good knock on Presage Nocturne there. Next horse, Middle Earth. And I think we've got differing opinions on this horse. I just don't like him. He got the blinkers last time, but geez, that was the JRA Cup. It was pretty ordinary, and he kind of bottled away there. I'm happy to oppose him, but what do you think?
He's done nothing in Australia. I can't believe it has taken them that long to put the blinkers on.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a little bit more merit in the run the other day at Moonee Valley. Like, he was on a 7-day backup out of the Caulfield Cup, coming back 400 metres in distance, and that's an impossibly hard thing to do. And just like his brother that's in the race, which is Buckaroo, they're brothers, these horses, they are blinker horses. So given they've gone on the first time the other day, this horse has got 2 or 3 runs in Europe back in June that would have him a live top 4 chance in the race.
Yeah.
You've very much got to have him on faith, because he's done absolutely zilch in Australia so far. But we talk about those horses that had a little bit of quality or got a little bit of class. He is one of them, but it's very much you're hoping those blinkers switch him on, because on what he's done so far, you couldn't have him. And I understand why you're taking that tact. But yeah,
I just think he's obviously not performing how he was over there. I just think maybe you're right about him. He's a good horse, and in the autumn he'll come out and win a Tancred or something because he's good. But I just think they haven't figured him out. Like, he's going awful.
I think it's been purely blinkers. I think he's just been desperate for them, and that's why I think.
Well, the one thing I can say about the JRA Cup is I've got it as a plus 3.5. It was a quick run, whereas the Cox Plate was minus 2.4. So they ran really good time in that JRA Cup, but it was still Star of India and Ellen Kerr.
Yes, you look at that and say,
really
line. Yeah, I get it. So for me, I'm not I'm not entertaining him as a winning chance, but he will go in my wider first fours.
Okay. Good. And he's $41 at the moment, best price. Next one, yeah, another one's really interesting to hear from you, Meydaan. Obviously, James McDonald comes aboard. He's drawn 22. People sort of talking up his Caulfield Cup run because it wasn't a great ride and he was sort of stuck out wide and he ran all right. But, is he more of a 2,400 meter horse or is he a 3,200 chance?
I reckon he's freaking hopeless, this horse. I can't believe, look, I understand James getting on him and, that creates some interest, but
Yeah.
you've got to remember they're businessmen, and if there's not many rides you can get on, well, you've got to take what you can get, and I think it's just one of them. I don't like him in a wet track. He's got no speed out of the gates. He's got plenty of miles in his legs, 14,800, but like he's a very similar connections, bought a horse called West Wind Blows a couple of years ago, and he's 8-10 lengths inferior to him. So, look, that's why, and you look at, if you stop him over the finish line at the Caulfield Cup, you sort of say, well, okay, he was wide, he wasn't beaten too far, but that's what gives me a bit of a stink on the Caulfield Cup. I don't know how good it was.
Yep.
So, but I won't be including him in everything. I've got him 200 to 1, and that's probably been kind. I just didn't like him.
Yeah, well, he's $18, and I reckon he'll firm.
Yeah, that'll be the James
He's just
McDonald.
the James McDonald factor, and he's just a talking point horse.
Yeah.
And I reckon he was I think he'll firm as well. So it's another good negative push on a horse that a lot of people think is a chance.
He doesn't really have any wet form. Like his wet runs have been very ordinary. Got beat 10 one day at Longchamp, and Longchamp can be wet, but his Goodwood run, that was a 4-horse race, and he still got beat 3 lengths, and it was one of those races where something had to run where it did, and that was just him. But nothing there.
Alrighty, the next one is an interesting runner, Absurde. He comes here for his 3rd Melbourne Cup, the former stablemate of Vauban with Willie Mullins. I have to say, I watched the replay of the Melbourne Cup last year, and he sort of made his run at the same time as Knight's Choice and Warp Speed, and they got a nice clear run through and ran 1-2, and he got sort of held up a couple of times, and maybe if he hadn't, I reckon he probably would have run 3rd.
Yep.
And then comes into it interestingly here for the first time, having had that Caulfield Cup run. It was an all right run, got beat 3 lengths. And you were talking positively about him for the Caulfield Cup. So what are you thinking now for the Cup here?
Look, it's obviously a race that Willie wants to win, and he's bought this horse a couple of times. I thought it was not one of Kieran's best last year in the Melbourne Cup.
Yeah.
And just a couple of people I respect said he paraded as fat as me in the mounting yard at Caulfield. So I wonder if that was just his pipe opener. And I think I sort of touched on it in the Caulfield Cup preview. I give him a chance there, and he only got beat 3 lengths. But if he had quite a bit of improvement to come, I think you've got to include him just because something's got to be next in line, if you know what I mean. I don't think he's a winning chance. I think he's more in that 3rd to 7th category, and he gets the inside gate. I like the fact that he drops a little bit of weight out of the Caulfield Cup. And Kieran's more than happy to stick with him. He's a bit of an exotic play for those exotics.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've got to throw him in there. He's $23. I don't have him as a winning chance, but you got to throw him in your quinillas and trifectas and first fours because he could run a hole.
Yep.
Next one's a horse that there's been a lot of talk about, and I guess fair enough in the sense that since he's transferred to his new trainer, Hank Grew, he's won 6 out of 6 on the grass. His only defeat was when they switched that race at Saratoga to the dirt. But apart from that, he's been winning. He's been winning by big margins. His last couple of 2-mile runs, he won by 2.3 lengths and 5.5 lengths, and he handles the wet. Comes with winning form. But I guess the big question is, those wins, his last couple of wins, like what are they? Is that a Sydney Cup? Is it an Adelaide Cup? Is it a Andrew Ramsden? What class has he been running in out at Kentucky and Germany?
It's a Balnarring Cup. So no, look, he's a little trier. He's a horse that'll like the wet, being by Zarak. If you go and watch those American runs, especially the Saratoga run, well, you know, he was very well held there on a interesting track. And Kentucky, well, they can't even pick their feet up over there, so don't worry about that stuff.
Right.
He's a nice listed horse in Australia, and that certainly won't be good enough for this. I got him 300.
Is it a $1.6 million race, that Kentucky race?
Yeah,
Bloody hell!
You know, yeah,
Vauban over there.
we've seen in Australia, just because you put on really rich races doesn't mean you get the best of horses, you know, and they're not much good over there. He's got 14. He's been everywhere. He'll like the wet. He's got plenty of miles, so he gets those type of ticks. But he's just so far off some of these other horses.
So he's $23. Do you put him in any exotics, or is he just not even worth?
No. Honestly, I don't. So Germany's obviously a place I've got a very, very good handle on. He's run. There was one run, and I thought, it was early in the prep, but just trying to give you which one it was. Yeah, it was the Wald Adler run. So he won by 3 lengths in a listed race at 2,800. First up. No disrespect to the jockey, but the jockey gets lost in Germany. He'll get lost here.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm staggered. You've said he's 20-1. Like there's a zero missing there.
Alrighty, I got another good negative push there for a runner in the market.
Don't like him at all.
Land Legend. He is 80 or 90-1 at the moment. He's coming off 2 last placings in a Turnbull and a Caulfield Cup on dry tracks, but I think you do think that he's a bit of a wetty, the source.
Yeah, I think he's a wet tracker. And every year the Melbourne Cup throws up 1 or 2 runners that you can write your own ticket about that just surprise the hell out of you. For mine, he's a horse that wants a brutal tempo. So I've got this race down as doing that. He won a Group 1 somewhere at Randwick, I think, last year or the year before, where they just ran brutally, and he just keeps coming and coming and coming. I think he beat Zardozi or something like that. And I might be outsmarting myself, which won't be the first time. But look, he gets a crossover on, but they've taken the earmuffs off pre-race and the noseband off. I suggest they might just let this bugger just run. They've been trying to hold him up and get him to run, and he's not letting down. You look at his sort of wet track stuff, and it's interesting. Like I said, he's already got a Group 1 handicap to his name, so he's not hopeless. Like, there's worse roughies than him, and I don't want to know him from a win point of view, but I'm more than happy to throw him, wide first 4, which is going to be my main bet. So,
yeah. No, it is interesting. I got some mail last year from the Waller camp that this was their Melbourne Cup horse last year. Like they were very keen very early on, and I backed him in futures in the Metrop, and he won that really well. Then I thought he was good in the Caulfield Cup. Just sort of, I didn't think it sort of suited. He over-raced, and then he kind of again over-raced in the Melbourne Cup and led from that wide gate. And I only got beat 3 lengths.
Yeah.
So like, I think he can run the trip. He won at St. Ledger pretty comfortably by 3 lengths over 2,600. Like you say, the wet might help. And yeah, like you look at Shiraz a couple of years ago for Waller.
Well, that's the horse I was trying to think of.
Like 100-1, 150-1, and ran home for second.
Yes.
And just, but he's probably the opposite horse in the sense that, like you say, he might actually just go and, he might just go and they just let him go, let him run.
Yep.
But yeah, I think I agree with you. He's probably that kind of, if there's one horse that might just surprise out of nowhere and do something, it could be him. Alrighty, Smokin Romans. I think they're just enjoying the Melbourne Cup experience. He's a 9-year-old. he sort of surprised winning a Turnbull a few years ago, and every now and again sort of pops up, but he hasn't done a lot this prep, and been running in pretty weak races. So he could be a chance for last.
Yeah, he's one of the fittest horses in the race, 22,000 metres. So he's been in work forever, which I love. That gives him a chance to run top half of the field at least, just on fitness alone. I've got him 300 to 1. I think he's just the bunny, and I think he'll be one of the first gone. But as you say, he's in the Melbourne Cup, so good on him.
$81 best price at the moment.
Yeah,
which is kind of surprising.
Yep.
Number 13, Changing of the Guard. The blinkers go on. He sort of he won the Lister's City Tats, and then he clipped heels in the Metrop when he looked like he might be going to do something. I guess the Geelong Cup was kind of a bit of the test of how he was going, and he was probably a bit disappointing there, beating 4.5 lengths. Is he any hope on the wet?
I don't like him. Talking to Chris, they said they felt the track was really gluggy and he just couldn't pick his feet up there in that glugginess. They weren't worried about being a wet track, but it was just that particular wet track, a bit shifty, and just, yeah. Obviously, outside gates, you would think he just rolls forward here and he's one of the leaders. I don't think he's that fast, and I think he's one of those horses that's going to be out on a limb and they could be forced to really put the foot down and create even more speed than there already is.
Well, from 24, he's going to have to do a bit to get out across to where he likes.
On my stuff, I don't actually think he's a 2,400 metre horse. I think he's a 2,000, 2,200, but he's not actually fast enough to run at that trip. So he's just one of those ones stuck in limbo, and I don't give him any hope.
Alrighty. Half yours. Obviously, the interesting runner, handles the wet, won the Caulfield Cup last start. I guess for me, that Caulfield Cup was his race. It was a target race. He was well weighted there, got the right run. All the horses racing against are sort of dropping, a kilo or two off that race, and he goes up half a kilo. So you're talking about a 2.5 kilo weight swing on most of them. McAvoys aren't really known for their Melbourne Cup horses. I just feel like he can run a good race, but I'm just happy to not consider him a winning chance, even though he's a very good chance of running a place. But I'm taking a set against him. I don't consider him one of the horses I'm going to back to win the race. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to put a line through him, but you could argue he might be just a winner. I still remember this horse was actually owned by Kieran Maher, I think, and
Kieran trained him. It was owned by Colin McKenna, who passed away, and so they bought him for about 300 grand on English Digital.
Yeah, and at the time he was an interesting horse back then, but I never thought he would have got to these heights. But he's, as I said, I've just got this stink around that Caulfield Cup. The horses that finished in the finish were all in the same spot, bar River of Stars. And look, he was strong enough. He was the favourite. He won impressively. The fact that he's just got this big starting price next to his short starting prices, I think he goes off favourite. The only reason I'm including him is just because he just seems to be able to win, and there might not be too many alternatives outside of a couple of horses here. I just love that fact that he's had that Queensland prep. It's been such a fruitful exercise for people that have ran him in Queensland and then come into the carnival. 17,000 metres. He's one of the fittest Australian horses in the race. Wet will be no problem. Those St. James like wet. And from a fast race point of view, he's going to be midfield and probably gets one of the better economical runs out of all the horses in the race. So for mine, I'm got him there. I would be surprised if he won, but I've got him running second myself. But it wouldn't surprise me also if he didn't run top 10. He's one of those horses. I was a little bit against him in the Caulfield Cup, thinking he wouldn't like a fast tempo. He proved me wrong there. He handled that good enough. But as we know, 3,200's a different beast. But at least he's fit. He will like the wet. and he gets a soft gate to maybe just hold up for an extra 50 or 70 metres than some of the ones at the back, and maybe that helps him in the finish. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The Caulfield Cup actually historically is probably the worst lead-up race for the Melbourne Cup in the last 14 years. There's been 2 winners of about 104 runners.
I remember you
Just
saying
from
that last year. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Without a Fight won
Yeah.
2 years ago. But the interesting thing, though, when I look at it, is the 2 winners of the Caulfield Cup have been Without a Fight and Val and Declare, and they both came off Queensland preps. So
Yeah.
if you like half yours, well, that's actually a big positive.
And nothing against the people that had Val and Declare, but he got a birthday, Christmas, and anniversary present all on the one day when he won his Melbourne Cup. Like, they walked, and Willow
They
just gave
walked
him
and
the best ride.
they ran minus 22 overall time, and then I think you could throw a blanket over about 8 of them on the line.
So, arguably most years he wouldn't have won either. So, anyway.
Alrighty. 15 is more Felons. I thought he ran well in the Metro. And, he was coming off a 518-day break first up with the Heatherly. So he hadn't run since March 2024, round the Heatherly, round the Kingston Town, down the track. But then the Metro run was really good. I thought the St. Ledger was a good race for him. And it's a bit hard because they ran minus 22 first half. So, even though he ran fourth, 1.4 lengths was disappointing on face value. I guess there was only so much he could do from where he was. He did run sort of the best late sectionals, although they all kind of ran reasonably similar. And he had horses like Asterix and Don Diego de Vega, who sort of behind him. I guess it's a class query, and maybe even the miles and the legs. He's at 8,700, but he's coming off a 518-day break. So I think that makes it hard. I can't kind of have him. Does the wet help him?
Look, he's by Churchill, and as a rule, they don't like it, but he's at a pivotal mare, and they do. Now, in his career, he ran a really good race at York on probably what was a 6 or a 7. He used to be a hurdling horse. This horse, he sort of stoutness won't be an issue. He did run second to a horse called Hamish one in that York race, and Hamish is one of the old champion sort of, no superstar, but just shows up every year up there in Europe. And Tashcam was third. That was a really good race. Then he was behind Absurde his next run. And interestingly, in 23's Melbourne Cup where he ran, he drew barrier 23 as well. So Richard Pegan wants to give himself the sack from drawing that gate. But I loved it. I was lucky enough to have the winner in the Metrop, and all I was doing was watching more Felons out the back because he was $9 to run top 9 in that race, and I could not believe the price. And he got so close. I was very disappointed in his run the other day. I'm a bit the opposite. This horse has got plenty of class.
Yeah, I like the horse. Like he ran a really good 5th in the Geelong Cup when he first arrived here. He won the Parramatta Cup. I backed him that day, and then he got a bit of nose in the Tancred. Like, I think he's a really good horse. I like him, but I just don't like that he obviously had an injury. He had 518 days off, and now he's trying to run in a Melbourne Cup off 4 runs. Like, it's just too hard. Like,
I agree with you completely. But if what price is he?
He's about $81.
Yeah, well,
actually, geez, I've backed him. He's 81s into 51.
To me, he's one of the horses that's got a bit of class about him.
Yeah.
And I'm like you. If he'd had another 2 runs under his name, I would be wanting to include him in the top 4. But I'll include him in those wider ones. But there's worse horses in the race than him. It's just not the ideal setup to win a Melbourne Cup.
No, but it's Waller, Tommy Berry. I think you have to put him in your trifectas and first fours because Waller and Ma always seem to fill 1 or 2 of those placings.
Yes.
So
just through numbers,
have to just throw them in.
Yep.
Onesmoothoperator. He's been here before. He won the Geelong Cup impressively last year, and then was beaten 5.3 lengths. They did say that he was sort of a bit off the boil in the Melbourne Cup. I think he'd had a bit of a foot issue or something before it, and so maybe there's an excuse that. But then he went awful. He seems like one of those horses that just comes here and does well, but And there has been a few of them where they sort of awful overseas, but they kind of come right. But people are saying his Moonee Valley Cup rated better than his Geelong Cup last year. Not to me. They
Yep.
ran plus 21 in the Geelong Cup last year. They ran minus 7.4 in that Moonee Valley Cup, and he beat Athabaskan and Scary. And I thought it was just a great ride, Mark Zahra ride. He just sort of sat and waited while all the others went off and took off too early, and he was just sitting there and didn't have to do anything. I'm just happy to not have him. He might do a little something, but $23, it is not for me.
Yeah, he's a horse that they've been to Dubai with, and interestingly, they always go looking for all weather stuff. He just doesn't have any wet track form at all. And his last wet track was at Yarmouth, which Yarmouth can be wet, but he got beat 8 lengths there, and his one before that he got beat 27 lengths. So I think wet's a real issue with him. I'm like you. I thought it was just something had to win at Moonee Valley, and it was him. He was last man standing.
Yeah.
Like we saw Dirty Rotten Red Cadeau come here with no form for a number of years, and he just used to show up in Australia. He's just not that same type of level horse, so I don't include him in anything myself.
Yep, fair enough. Next one's an interesting runner. Further, the Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds we've seen have such a great record. Rekindling one with 51.5, Cross Counter one with 51. Il Paradiso should have won the Vow and Declare one with 52.5. And then Doval Legend came as favourite, and he had 55. And I think they kind of weighted these Northern Hemisphere horses almost out of it, Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds for a bit. But we get another one here with 52 kgs. Did win 2 starts back over 2,700, a race that I think one or two of the sort of Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds that have come have sort of won that race. And that was beaten 4.5 lengths in the St. Ledger at Doncaster. In normal times, I would kind of think this profile's all right, but I know you have a question mark over this horse.
Yeah. Interesting story. He's owned by, I think, a couple of reporters or something, and just battlers over there. And I think they've sold maybe 25%, if I'm right, to Lizzie Gels.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's good form on paper. When you actually pull it apart, there is no form there.
Right.
He was well and truly beaten by Scandinavia at Newmarket, and Newmarket's it's a very testing track at the best of times. And his Newbury win, he beat Epic Poet. Now, Al Riffa beat Epic Poet at Ascot by 12 or 14 lengths, and he just beat Epic Poet there. When he had the little weight advantage, he had the favours in the run. They ran no time whatsoever, and no sectional time either. And then I'm told there might have been a little issue out of the Scandinavia, the last race in the St. Ledger.
Right.
Scandinavia's a very good
So
horse
that
up
issue
there.
sort of happened after that race, did it?
Yes.
Right, okay, yeah.
For mine, I think he's a really interesting runner, but he is a 3-year-old that's been up since January on his pretty much second prep. I just think he's a horse that you have a look in the autumn, and he might be able to knock off something once he's had an Australian prep here. But Andrew Balding's a phenomenal trainer. He's very, very good, very good. And not many improve one off Andrew. Yeah. I just think you go into a distance that the horse has sectionally proven he doesn't like. These wild geese horses, not many of them up there in Europe at the moment. It hasn't got big crops, but most of them, as a rule, have liked the wet. Now, this horse has had 3 goes on a wet, got beat 9.5. He did run second at a mile, but beaten 5.5, and then he was just outclassed in his run the other day. It's a big ask for a 3-year-old, and he probably doesn't have the quality of some of the other 3-year-olds that have come here previously. Yeah. Really, the only run I can recommend him off is the run where he won his maiden. He ran okay time in that thing, but maiden to a Melbourne Cup is just way too big. I think he's too short in the market, and he's just one to have a look at in the autumn.
Alrighty. Does he stay here, or is he?
I don't know, actually. I really don't know.
All right. He's $26. For would you put him in the first four, or are you just going to leave him out?
If I have a wide one, I think I'll tick the box for fourth, but that would be it. Just because of I'm going to be quite skinny first and second, and then wider third and fourth, trying to get a couple of these roughies to fill a hole and get a dividend.
Yeah. Fair enough. Parchment Party, the first American trained horse to run in the Cup, won a couple of races at Saratoga over 2,800, won them by 8.5 lengths, but he seems to be a dirt horse. What can you tell us about him?
You watch these American races, and geez, they want to put you to sleep. They are so boring, and they look like they're going so slow. The thing to note with American racing in general is as soon as the gates open, it's like their tails are on fire, and they just go like the clappers.
Right.
This horse doesn't have speed, but he just keeps whacking away, hanging on. Interestingly, he pretty much couldn't get warm before they've stepped him up to. He went from 1,800 to 2,800 and just shit in. He won by 9 lengths, and then they backed him up in a listed race, and he won again. So he's had 2 goes at that 2,800 metres, won them both. And as you said, touched on, one was on the slop / dirt. If it's wet, look, I could have marked this horse 500 to 1, but something in me just wants to, because I've got this as a brutal run race. I just wonder, does he just keep whacking away? He likes that sloppy dirt stuff.
Yeah.
Does he just surprise and knock anyone out? But I've just had a look, and he's $50. I can't believe he's $50. That's way, way too short. But I don't think many people are going to have him included, but very good trainer and jockey from a statistical point of view. So I suppose you respect that. But as a rule, these American horses, they're Tassie stuff. So it's generally not good enough. But anyway, they won a race to get into the race, so good on them. And interesting, he's only got 52.
Yeah. All right. Athabaskan, 7-year-old. He's been around for a while. He's run second in a Sydney Cup, won a St. Ledger. He sort of bobs up every now and again, but most of the time run down the track. He ran second in that Moonee Valley Cup. That was kind of something, had to run second. He had an easy run. I don't know. I don't give him any hope.
No, me either, unfortunately. He gets barrier 1. Another one that doesn't have the miles in the legs, and I don't like him on the wet at all. I've got him 500 to 1.
Yeah. He's 80 to 1 at the moment. Goodie Two Shoes is 40 to 1. Same trainer, Joseph O'Brien, as your horse, Riffa. And he's obviously won a couple of Melbourne Cups. What brought them to bring this mare over? She's run consistent form, but it's sort of that listed Group 2, and it's against mares. It feels like a weird one, but have you spoken to Joseph O'Brien about what they're doing here? Is she a legitimate chance?
They normally, I honestly haven't spoken to him about her. They normally bring, when they travel their horses, they always like to bring them with another horse.
Yeah.
So I can only guess that that's why she's here.
Yeah.
She's had a steeple / hurdling career previously. I've got a horse over there in Europe, filly called Bubblegum, that we've got a good opinion of, but she beat Goodie Two Shoes fairly easily. And then she's gone on to win a couple of sort of listed / Group 3 races, but look, to be honest, they weren't the greatest. She's qualified. I expect she goes forward. She's been carrying 61, and for a mare, and the hurdles, she's carrying 72 and 73.
Yeah.
She won't know herself with 51.5, but she just doesn't really have any ratings. Even when she won those other races, I've got them going only fairly average. Probably just not one that I could even suggest that you include, because she's drawn that bit wider. She's going to be forced to sit outside some other speed, and I think that's just too hard a thing. But Look, her Gowan Park run was probably her best run. It was sort of a very, very firm track, and she ran home in 34 and change, but it was a day where a lot of the other horses were running home in 33. So that doesn't fill me with any real confidence to say that she's got to turn a foot.
And she handles the wet, but it almost seems like she's probably better on the dry, really.
Yeah, she's one of them. She's sort of, I think she's just a good, honest, genuine horse that tries her best, but just really devoid of class. Got
a concussion plate on the front as well, which is not ideal.
No, not in the least. So crossover, tongue tie, but I think she's always wore the tongue tie. So not for me.
The next one, very interesting runner, River of Stars, ran second at Longchamp over 2,800, Group 1 to Grateful on a wet track. I'll show you rate that run. She then came and ran seventh between 4 lengths in the Tancred first up, ran third in the Sydney Cup, second up in the first 2 runs in Australia, which they usually don't run that well for Waller, I find, first off the plane. So I thought they were quite impressive runs. And I thought she was a run of the race in the Caulfield Cup by a long, long way for me, because that Caulfield Cup, they just went so quick early. They ran plus 17 above standard the first half and minus 10 the second half. And like you say, all those horses sort of just smoking their pipe up the back, Presage Nocturne and Birdman, they were entitled to run on because there was so much hot speed. She was right up there on that strong tempo, kept fighting really, really hard. I think she's an out and out stayer. I'd like her to lead. Like I said, Melbourne Cup usually either need to lead or get the hell away from the first half of the field. Mares don't have a great record in this race unless they're very, very good, like a Very Elegant. I think in the last 14 years there's only been Very Elegant win, and maybe High Emotion ran third. So that's probably my negative, but I almost have her on top. I just thought that Caulfield Cup run was really impressive. But keen to know also your thoughts on, what was her overseas form like, that Longchamp second and some of her other runs. How did that sort of all tie up?
Yeah, look, I know you'll look at the Longchamp run and say it was a Group 1. That was a poor Group 1 for mine. She was coming off getting beat 2.5 lengths, ran fourth to Savannah's Night. And Presage Nocturne ran third in that race. So if you like Presage Nocturne, you've got to include this horse. But that French form was probably just the C form. In terms of endearment, it was a nice horse over there. She was running around it, but again, it was only at listed level. So it wasn't proper Group 1 level. So I was a little bit surprised, just like you said, see it so run so well off the plane, albeit it sort of, I don't know if those 2 races have turned out to be anything fantastic. Arapaho, Watham. I don't know about that Sydney Cup. And then if you like the Caulfield Cup, you just got to have this horse in. It was clearly the run of the race. Like Valiant King is going to start half its price, and this thing still beat at home after doing twice as much work.
That's what surprises me. And
really, it wasn't as if it was going into that race off an amazing platform. It had only had the 3 runs prior. So where at least Valiant King was coming off some of those brutal runs and whatnot. So look, I really want to include it in most things, and I was so excited to back it. And then when I did the miles, I thought, well, you're another Waller horse that really going to fall short in terms of meters in the legs with only 8,000. When I really pull its wet track stuff apart, I don't like it as much on the wet. Now, see the stars.
9 starts for 5 placings on the wet, whereas she sort of had 4 wins from 10 on the good.
Yeah.
So she's run some good raraces, but she hasn't won on a wet track.
Normally see the stars absolutely love it. So maybe, but, there's a couple of runs there where she's been well and truly held off and had every possible too, So you've got to include her in everything, but that just stops me from including it as a winning chance because it just doesn't have the miles. And if it's going to have another gut buster, I just could see it just peaking a little bit at the 200 and getting run over.
Yeah.
That would be worrying.
I don't know, like there's a lot of elements of her that I don't like being a mare, and I'm not sure about the wet and the profiling, but I don't know, I can't find many horses to win this Melbourne Cup, and she's one of the four that I've narrowed down to.
Well, it's one
Um,
of your main lead ups, isn't it? Like you're either
yeah, well that's
saying
it.
Geelong.
That's it. And she like in terms of the best run before this Melbourne Cup, I think it was her.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I mean, what else is there? The Geelong Cup and Moonee Valley Cup, and like, like, and
That's
she
right.
was just on that brutal. So you just have to back her because I don't know. Well, I'm just running out of horses to back,
Yep.
So, and I think the $18 doesn't make sense to me.
No, no.
It on form, why is like you say, why is Valiant King so short? When she ran better than it.
Yeah, look,
It's $20 somewhere now at the moment. So
um, yeah, obviously it started 120s in the Caulfield Cup, so that's probably why they've got it short
yeah,
enough. But
and Bo Mertens, I don't think has ever ridden a Group One winner, but it's the Melbourne Cup.
yeah,
Robbie Dolan won it, Michelle Payne won it, so
100%. Yeah,
I don't think it matters.
no, no.
All right, your horse, Royal Supremacy here. I think he's probably exceeded your expectations. Been fantastic for you. Second in the Newcastle Cup, won a Met-Trop, and then fifth in a Caulfield Cup. I mean, the connections must, the people who bought into this horse with you must have just loved it. I'm guessing this probably wasn't one of your more expensive ones either,
Look,
comparatively.
I suppose they're all expensive, but
Yeah,
look, he was the horse I'd said when we were sort of selling him. He was an Australian horse running up there in Europe, and some of the horses you see up there, you just know they're not going to be suited down here, and others you just know they're just going to love it. And he
yeah,
was one of them. Very
yeah,
rare to find him actually, but
yeah,
so look, they're having a wonderful time.
yeah.
He's a hard pulling horse. He could be 12 months away. This horse, so
Well,
whatever
he's
he's
very
done,
lightly raced, isn't he? He's a 4-year-old, had 14 starts. It's sort of, he just seems to be overachieving in terms of, yeah, like he gives me that impression he's going to be even better next year.
yeah,
But do you think he's a 2 miler or is he more of a 2400 horse?
yeah. Honestly, he's more of a 22, 2400 meter horse.
Yep,
I've got a real query on him running the distance.
yep.
And especially with his race manners, he wants to
He does
get
want
on
to go
and
hard, doesn't he?
yeah, he wants to go hard. He wants to get on with it, and he really needs a bum to cover him up. And you saw in the Metrop, he got the fence, he was smothered away, and when he got out, he had his dash at him and was good enough to win. But arguably, you could say Vauban and more Felons were the better two runs out of that race.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but
draw probably doesn't help him, does it? Like
no, because you're sort of on that outside, and if you don't
yeah,
get smothered away,
yeah.
he could be beaten at the halfway mark. It's just he's just got a few quirks that he's got to sort out. But
Is
yeah,
wet positive or
no, don't look. He won a Wyong Cup on a wet track, but his better stuff, I like him, is on the firmer
better on
ground.
the firm? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you
as
think he
much as
can
I'm
run
cheering,
top four, or you think he's probably
no, look, as much as I'm cheering for him,
yeah.
I don't think he's a top four chance in this year.
All right. Torranzino, um, we kind of just said we were going to give our top six, and I ended up putting him in as my sixth because I had to find something, and it surprised me. But at the end of the day, that Bart Cummings, we talk about what's actually the best lead up. Like to be fair, the Bart Cummings, just because the time was so insane, 27 lengths above standard first half, plus 19 overall. That Valiant King, Torranzino. That's just a really brutally strong run race, and I really like that for Melbourne Cup sources that come out of those strong run races. They're just fitter and they bounce off them well. And then he came and he won the Geelong Cup, which is known to be a good lead up, beat Gilded Water, who had its chance. The form wasn't anything flash out of that Geelong Cup, but Paul Pruska had that surprise baby and it only got beat less than a length in its Melbourne Cup run. So look, I'm not backing Torranzino to win, but I think you have to put him in first fours because he's just had two good runs and two reasonably strong run races, and I think he's one of those horses that could run a place.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't disagree with you. I couldn't have him to win at all, but
Yeah,
he's just got this really good grounding in terms of he's got the miles, but he's also comes out of the fast run races. So
yeah,
he's rock hard. he's quite a genuine horse too. I don't mind that, like when he's got up to his right races, when he's been in the market, he runs well.
Yeah.
But
And he's run second on a bog in the Warrnambool Cup, beating a nose, so the wet's all right for him.
yeah, so for me, I'll tick the first four, like the fourth box, but that's probably as close as I've got him. But just worried he's a wholehearted horse. I just don't know if he's got the class of what we've sort of couple we've mentioned.
And then Valiant King, who again, it's a funny prep, having only 3 runs coming into a Melbourne Cup 4th up. I don't think any horse has won in the last 14 years when I look at it doing it 4th up, but he won a Bart Cummings by 2.8 lengths. Like I said, they ran plus 19 there. And then, yes, he got back probably a lot further back than he wanted because he drew, the car park in the Caulfield Cup. But again, it was a good run. Yeah, the prep's not ideal, but he's at the end of the day, he's coming off 2 really good runs, and he's one of the 4 horses that I've got as the winning chance in the race. He's down there with 51. Joe McNeil has won a Melbourne Cup with Twilight Payment. It's a Waller horse, and so I think you have to include him.
Yeah, look, he started $81 in the race last year. I just despise the miles in his legs at only 6,000. It's such a light prep, and I agree with you. I think he's run out of his skin in his last 2. But
to be fair, that last year Melbourne Cup, that was even worse. He ran in the Kingston Town where he ran last, then he ran in the Turnbull, then the Caulfield Cup. He only had 3 runs. He ran really down the track, beaten 14 lengths, 7 lengths, 14 lengths. And then he only got beaten 5.7 in that Melbourne Cup. Off that, I know the lead up this year is not all that much better, but at least he's running better.
Yeah, that's true. Look, I just thought it was a crappy Caulfield Cup, Melbourne Cup last year.
Yeah,
so I'm sort of penning that race.
Yeah.
So there's been 1, 2, 3, 4. There's been 5 winners out of last year's Melbourne Cup, but against that, there's been 118 runners. So, look, on what your eyes tell you, yes, he's the flashing light his last 2. But again, with that, we've mentioned that Caulfield Cup. He sat last the fence, sucked up the whole way, and the fact that he couldn't get past River of Stars, who was 6 times his price, that leaves me a bit cold. And now he's obviously a weak gutted thing or something for Waller to constantly, get him to show up here, only so lightly raced into his prep. But he's only won 2.
Well, he didn't miss a run. He didn't miss a run. He was meant to run on the Naturalism on the 20th of September.
Yep.
For some reason, they had to scratch, and then he went in the Bart Cummings, theoretically underdone, but ran quite well. I mean, the word was that before the Sydney Cup in the autumn, that Waller had just declared him unbeatable.
Right.
And he had a little issue and got scratched. So he sort of, maybe if he'd had that Naturalism run, you'd feel a bit more comfortable with the prep. But maybe, I don't know, do you have some trust in Waller that if he's managed to get him to win the Bart Cummings in a brutally run race and run 3rd in the Caulfield Cup, that he's done enough with him?
Yeah, look, and I just think that extra 700-800 metres into a Melbourne Cup, I just think that exposes him, and I think he's way too short at $8. I expect him to be very popular, and I get all that. He's got no weight. He's got Joe McNeil. I understand, but for mine, I've got to oppose him because history says they don't win.
Yep. Fair enough. Alrighty, well, we'll just go through your top 6 here. I mean, you gave your ratings at the start. You rated Al Riffa 380, and he's $10, $11. Clearly your top pick. And your others here, you've got a couple of roughies that you like as well?
Yeah, as I said, the real class horses are only Al Riffa, Vauban, question mark on Middle Earth. He's got a prep overseas that said he was a classy weight for age horse, and maybe more Felons. I think the rest you say are genuine handicap type horses. So they've got to be included. I wanted to be so hard against Half Yours, but he just gets such a good position from the map. And he is a winner. So I've got him in for second. Vauban is the one, if he'd had another run, he would be a genuine, again, not because I own him, but just purely on class. And if we go off Timeform ratings, Timeform will tell you that you only want to be with Al Riffa, Buckaroo, Vauban, and that's probably it, to be honest. So
Right.
he's a legitimate chance if they ride him right in the right spot, and then he gets the race to unfold.
Yeah.
He's the previous 2 Melbourne Cups, he's cooked himself, so he's got to parade better. And then if Blake can just get an absolute dream run into it where he doesn't get out until that 300, I think he'll be very, very scary. And then you're trying to second guess a little bit, but it's interesting that the pre-race earmuffs go off Land Legend. They did that last year, and he ran such a good race, and he was so good first up. So I said that I think that says to me he's going good for the prep. He just wants a wet track. It looks like he's going to get that. So he's in there. Again, more Felon scares me. Not quite the miles, but at least he's going to suck out the back. And if you're going to overcome that, I think it's being as far away from the speed as possible. I don't want to know more Felons if it's a proper wet track, though. I don't think he'll do as well.
Yeah.
And Absurde, I've sort of, again, a bit like you, left with him simply from a map point of view. He's a very fit horse. Willie's bought him before, and this year I think he's had the Melbourne Cup in mind from the start of the prep, and that's why he's kept him a little bit shorter. He's even given him a prep run. We spoke about horses that have a run in Australia off the plane have a better record than those that don't, and I think that elevates him a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's how I've ended up.
Yeah,
but
excellent.
Probably my best advice, if you're just not a regular desperate like me and Dean that like to bet all year round, I say it every year, the trifecta in the first 4 pools are massive. I think we saw last year, albeit with Knight's Choice winning, it was 600,000 the dividend. But if you can get the little bit of a dividend of a trifecta or a first 4, especially the first 4, it borders on life changing depending on what percentage you can get of it, if it's the right numbers that fall in. So if you've only got $50 to spend on the race, for mine, I think you go and play a first 4 and try and change your life rather than having $50 on a 8 or 10 to 1 chance.
Yeah, and you can really narrow it down certainly for that winner. I mean, it looks like, if I'm reading this right, I think you think that either Riffa half yours or Vauban win.
Yeah.
And I think, just looking at mine, I think there's only 4: River of Stars, Valiant King, Riffa, or Vauban.
Yep.
So between us, there's basically five horses you can take for a win.
Yep.
And then I've got Presage Nocturne and Torranzino as sort of the 2 that I think can run a place. And I very much agree with you around half yours, Land Legend, more Felons, Absurde, and those last 3 are all really big prices that can run a hole. And so I think, you can take a sort of a 5 by, what is that, 5 by 9 or, type trifecta and it doesn't cost the earth and you can get a really big collect, even the first 4.
Yeah, and if you want those tips year round, just subscribe to your service, do you know?
Well, a lot easier races to
100%
every day. But it is a cup where I think there are limited win chances. So and it certainly, it always helps me crystallize when I speak with you because, getting pots on horses that are in the market, such as, Presage Nocturne and Meydaan and even, Flatten The Curve and, people talking about these sorts of horses as legitimate chances. And, it's good to be able to put a pen through some of them. And I think our record's pretty good, to be honest. I think we had about 3 years in a row where we had the winner in our top 2. And then last year, if Warp Speed had won, it would have been very, very nice. But
why didn't he protest? Sorry.
Yeah. Why didn't he just win? Well, I'll tell you why he won. My uncle passed away last year, a few days before the Cup. And his birthday was on the 11th, and his funeral was on the 11th of the 11th. And so my mum said back number 11, and the whole family backed it. And I outsmarted myself, and of course I didn't. I then the Traders Tips boys who one of the services we run that get mail, that their best back runner that they gave out to everyone in our newsletter was Knight's Choice.
Wow.
And they're working on an AI database, and the 2 guys working on it didn't tell me until after the race that they found one horse and it was Knight's Choice. And
Wow.
So I had 3 different ways they could have backed Knight's Choice and didn't. And just to be sicker, I truckloaded Warp Speed and got better nose. And
Yeah.
I just spent the night crying. But anyway, hopefully this year's a bit better with Vauban. But thank you so much, Luke. Really appreciate your time as always and your insights. And you've got 3 runners, which is a huge credit to you and the Australian Bloodstock team. And obviously El Riffa a huge chance, and we really think Vauban is definitely the forgotten horse. There's one forgotten horse in the race. It's Vauban. He said, I think we haven't even spoken, but Blake Shin got off after the Caulfield Cup and just said he was on the Sydney leg the whole way. And we know Sydney horses, their first time at Caulfield, that's often a thing, and he kind of is a Sydney horse because all of his entire runs in Australia had been in Sydney up until that run.
Yep.
And I think, he was ridden too close, and in hindsight, like not bagging the ride, but in hindsight, he was ridden too close.
Yeah.
And I just think it was a put a pen through run. And I don't see how people can look at his Metrop run where he probably should have won with 58.5 and his Tancred run and say that he's not going to be a big chance on a wet track here.
Yeah, very much. Those galleyways, they seem to love it. So, that should be a poss.
Fantastic. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Luke, and good luck tomorrow.
Good luck to everyone. Yep. Thank you.
Cheers.
At Winning Edge Investments, our team of highly skilled expert analysts and full-time professional punters review the data, crunch the figures, assess the best betting opportunities, and deliver them to your phone via our app and your email inbox in real time so you profit. Go to www.winningedgeinvestments.com, look at our membership options, make your choice, and enter the promo code PODCAST to receive a special 25% discount on your first membership just for listening. That's PODCAST in capital letters for a 25% ongoing discount on your first membership. Treat your betting like a business and invest intelligently with Winning Edge Investments.